On the Jacob Beer Show, I'm so happy to have on Pete Nelson, as you know him, the Treehouse Master. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Jacob. Thanks for calling. I'm happy to be on your show.
Thank you so much. And my apologies for anybody who's listening. I'm in a bigger room than normal because with studying in the finals week at Purdue, it's a little bit hectic. So where we could find room, I had to find room. So I hope you can hear me fine, as well as our listeners.
Again,
So take us through. You're from Ridgewood, New Jersey. I actually know somebody from Ridgewood, a friend of mine at Purdue, and
uh,
you started out loving trees and tree houses as young as when you lived in New Jersey. Take us through what that was like and how your fantasy grew into reality.
Jacob, boy, that's going back a long way because I have now gotten into my 60s and I lived in New Jersey from, I for some reason I remember dates really well, but we moved up from Toms River, New Jersey to Ridgewood when I was 3, and we took off when I was 9. My dad got a job, actually same company, but they transferred him overseas for a few years. We were outside of Brussels and Belgium, of all places. And but in New Jersey, absolutely, the trees, they were so beautiful. Ridgewood, even as a kid. Well, I guess my dad was a forestry major at Syracuse University in upstate New York, and so he always had a fondness for trees, and he would point out all the beautiful trees that we were among in Ridgewood, and really was the influence behind the first tree house that we built together. I think I was about 7 years old, and we built a tiny little tree house in the backyard of our tiny little house in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And it stuck with me. I just remember so clearly having that first place that was my own, a certain sovereignty to it, my own rules, my own little world. And it stuck with me for forever, really. I mean, I I was always interested in small structures that I could create myself. Um, even in that elementary school age, I recall dreaming up what my next bigger treehouse was going to be like, and I could even I mean it's boring stuff. I hate to say it, but it was. I mean, well, then again, it was. I was going to build a zoo in the trees. I was going to have a whole zoo. That was my fantasy. Just create this place for animals to all hang out up in the trees with me, and that didn't happen.
Wow. So take us through, you've been doing tree houses and you start to this day after the show and before the show. Did Animal Planet reach out to you? How did that process all work?
Yeah. So in college times, I went off and I had a great education. Went to a place called Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and was an economics major of all things. And I was sort of thinking to myself at the age of, tender age of 22, about probably where you are somewhere, Jacob, and, what do you do with your life? And I realized that as if you were going to become an economist, for instance, that life was going to be a tough one for me. I think I was done with school. I knew I was done with school, but I also knew I was good. I had a certain aptitude working with my hands. In the summer times, I would work with a carpenter, and I learned, the basic skills of carpentry, and I found it really just so enjoyable, creating things with your hands and being able to look at what you did at the end of the day. And it was so appealing that around that same time, I decided that there was another person in my life that came and played this wonderful game of squash with us. Like, it's a racket sport, and some of you probably know it, but this guy would show up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the college campus and play squash with us. And I had to find out what is it that you do that you can free up at this hour of the day. And he was a home builder, and he built single family homes. Ed Biggs, great guy. And so he inspired me to go off in this direction rather than, head to Wall Street or wherever it was that you were supposed to go after such a nice education. I chose the path that I knew I had maybe a little bit of aptitude in, building and design. He would design the houses that he built, and so I made a deal with my sweet wife Judy that I was already together with, that if we moved to the rainy Northwest, I could become a builder, a single family home builder. And she took the deal. We got here in 1987, and it wasn't long before I was kind of dreaming about tree houses again. I loved design. I like building houses, but houses, when you've got a little bit of ADD and a little bit of the H part in there too, I was finding myself getting bored by the time that the house was framed. Even like I wanted something a little more quick, something I could create quickly and execute quickly. And a tree house was always sort of in the back of my mind, even since I was a kid. So it was at that time that I thought, let me build tree houses. I'll figure out a way to do this if I can. I mean, it seems silly, and it was, because people didn't really imagine tree houses the way that I think we do now. But I had this idea that I'd love a space in the trees, a conditioned space. You could keep it warm, you could be up in the trees, you could create a comfortable spot, maybe a place to lie down, a little desk to write stuff on, and you know, these were the young person could actually experience and enjoy. Not houses. Kids' tree houses are great, but they're for kids. Let's think of something that we could go up into and write a novel, or love letters, at least poetry, music, and that's what stuck with me. So I didn't let this idea drop, even though that it became quite clear that there wasn't much of a market for it. In the early days, people were saying, well, I've got $800, and not that $800 isn't a lot of money, but it wasn't enough to really build what I had in mind. So I recruited a few, actually friends from college days, and even earlier. Maybe their parents would put a treehouse at the place they've got up on the island or up in Vermont, or wouldn't that be great to have an extra bedroom? And I convinced a few people to do it that way, and it took some years, but by 2011, Animal Planet came calling, and that's when it kind of really took off.
And was it tough? I mean, still to today, I mean, I've requested to have you on my show. Is it tough ever getting recognized? Like, does it ever hit you hard? Like, I'm out at dinner and somebody's asking for a photo, and I'm just this guy who I'm houses and I have the show, and now millions of views came in with that. Is that ever tough?
Yeah. No, never. I mean, come on. I am a treehouse builder. It's the greatest thing ever. People want to talk tree houses. You'll get a sense of it right now, Jacob. I can talk tree houses until I'm blue in the face. I mean, every way you slice a tree house, it's great. Well, okay, with the exception of trying to get permits. Okay, permits are a pain in the rear end. That's all there is to it. So, but outside of that, major component, you're in the woods. You're using your hands. You've got buddies around you. Your family, ideally. Creating these spaces is magical. It's just such a joy, and so when I'm out and people might recognize me, it's a pleasure. I'm the treehouse guy. I could be pegged with a whole lot worse.
For sure. And a couple other questions. One is, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to build a tree house, but they don't want to spend $10 million? It's not that much, but some are though. But they don't, maybe they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
spend $1 million, grand, but they could spend 20 to 30 grand, which is not the budget that you work with. What would you tell them to put in their treehouse for 50 grand? We would say, what would you advise? Chairs, a little
oh
bar.
man. Okay, well, yeah. Well, I mean, I think you got to get back to the basics, which is trees grow. They grow at the tips, so they don't grow up. They get fatter, greater in girth. And they grow at their tips, so they grow taller and so forth. But your treehouse, if you lock that in at 10 feet, let's say, your treehouse isn't growing and going up relative to the ground. Your tree's getting fatter, so keep that in mind. And the trees move. They're not moving like they're moving in the wind, right? They're moving a little bit, and so with that in mind, you've got to think of flexibility. So creating your treehouse platform is the important part to think about. Yes, you could have so much fun imagining what your beautiful creation is going to look like, whether it's got, kitchens and bathrooms and etc. But
the key is trees grow and trees move. And so you need a flexible and strong platform. You might build something extra small up there, big enough to have a chair and a desk, maybe a place to lie down. That's ideal. And a little deck to look out over your whatever you're looking over. And that would be the essence of a tree house right there. That typically doesn't weigh too terribly much, so you don't have to worry about weight. It's hard for me to say that because people get carried away, including myself, all the time. So your tree house, you got to think in terms of like, what is a structural engineer going to tell you? Like, I've had plenty of times talking people out of creating beams that are way too small. If you're going to span 12 feet, let's say, from one tree to the next, your beam wants to be something that's closer to a 6 by 12 than a 2 by 4. You know what I mean? You want to be erring on the high side, the beefier side in the members that are making up your platform. And then if you're connecting two trees, one tree is going to move one way and the other is going to move the other. So that's where the flexibility needs to happen. And I would suggest, you just go online, you look and you see what this, the latest way of connecting your tree house to the trees is. And there's a little bit of work there, and it's fun. I mean, that kind of research is important, and it would serve anyone well to just take a little time and look at what that hardware looks like. I mean, we love to sell our hardware. We have a business of selling hardware. There's other people that sell hardware. So, you don't have to just go to our place, but by all means, do some research, determine the size of the platform that you're going to be creating. And then what you put on top of that is, the sky's the limit. Literally, you can just create something as simple as a little shed or as extravagant as the Taj Mahal.
For sure, good point. And then kind of my last question is, do you ever plan to retire, or do you plan to continue doing this for as long as possible? I think that's a good question.
Jacob, that's so.
I haven't heard you answer that yet, so I thought I'd
I
bring it
love it. I love it. It's funny because I have I have so many exciting things that I'm working on, and I'm only 61 years old, so retirement is not in the plans. And for that matter, if it feels like this and it's felt like this forever, it feels good. It feels fun. It's, challenging, plenty of challenges in this little world that we're in, creating these little and sometimes not so little dreams for people. And so um retirement, I love the idea of relaxing at some point, but no time soon. No time soon.
interesting. Wow. And one last question, I just want to sneak in there. Have you ever built a treehouse in Indiana?
Indiana. Boy, we did. Where was that? It was Sturgis. Is Sturgis in Indiana? There's not the Sturgis where the motorcycle. Um, a long, long, long time ago, we built a kind of a Swiss Family Robinson treehouse there. I can barely hear you, Justin. Are you getting closer to the microphone? But did you say yes, there's a Sturgis?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we did. We got that one. I think we've built in we added up the states. We've built in something like 33 states and 7 countries at this point.
Crazy. Wow.
That's a lot. I've been doing it for a long time though.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you coming on the Jacob Beer Show today. I had to ask, of course, it's the third to last question because I don't want to ask the same questions as every other interviewer. So I got to be unique in my way.
That's
So,
nice.
well, I appreciate you coming on and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob. You have a great day.